Hey, what's happening, all you dudes and dudettes? This is Dudes Talking Freedom back at you once again. This is Luke.
And I'm Jeremy.
And we want to thank you for joining us on the Dudes Talking Freedom podcast. We're brought to you by Warriors for Freedom, a nonprofit that creates pathways to engage service members to help veterans and their families prevent suicide, foster camaraderie, and help them live their best lives. Check them out at warriorsforfreedom.org. All right, folks, we're talking that not so mainstream news, banking, Biden, freedom, and whatever the hell else we want to talk about. So let's get into it, Jeremy, shall we?
Yes, sir. Let's do it.
Is Biden one of those words you can't say, or do you get kicked off YouTube for that?
No, it's usually has to do with convid.
Convid?
Yeah.
Is that like convict music?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, it usually has to do with anything related to the software upgrade. So you talk about the software upgrade, and if you use the actual term, then that'll get you suspended for a couple of weeks, like we did with Dr. Chase a couple of weeks back. That kind of sucked. We had to postpone our release of our Eileen Riverside video, which just went out today. So if you haven't had a chance to go check out our interview with Eileen, who's running for Prosper School Board, Place 5. Go check that out. That's up on YouTube as of today. Also, we weren't on air last week because of spring break here in Prosper. So
Spring break 23.
Spring break 23. Yep.
So what'd you go down to? Cozumel? Did you
Fort Lauderdale?
Did you go down to Fort Lauderdale?
No.
Did you go down to Padre Island? That's where we were.
No, man. We went to family. We did a couple like short trips. We went to Jackson Hole for a few days, and that was fun. I got real sick the last day we were there. Spiked a really bad 4-degree jump in my feet. Like fever went up to almost pushing 103, and that was after taking 4 Advil before I went to bed the night before. I woke up with a big fever, but
brought to you by Advil.
I think it was part of the detox protocol I'm on, because I didn't have any stomach flu symptoms. I didn't have any software upgrade symptoms. I didn't have any respiratory traditional flu symptoms except for the fever. Yeah, it was really just stomach bloat and cramping and the fever.
Have we talked about your detox program? Did we talk about it a little bit?
We talked about it a little bit with Chase. But yeah, I'm doing this. I'm doing a trifecta protocol. I've been doing it. I'm in week 6 right now.
The triple Lindy.
Yeah, it's fungal, and heavy metals and parasite, and I'm tackling them all at the same time. And it's an aggressive protocol. But I have never felt more clean and alert. My brain, I think, is operating at a much better level than I had been.
I'm just envisioning you on the toilet, sweating your ass off, blowing things.
It was
foreign objects out of your posterior.
No, man, it was what you'd think so, but it's not. When I was doing the detox juice, which it's an extremely, it was an aggressive juice. I did that for almost a full month straight every day.
Right.
That was pretty nasty. That was a third of a cup of apple cider vinegar, a full lemon juice squeezed out of a full lemon. You boil 3 garlic cloves and about an inch worth of chopped ginger. An inch off the root, and you cut it off, and you peel it and then chop it up, and you boil that in water for 10 minutes. Then you put some ice cubes in the water, cool it down, and then you mix it all up in a mason jar with the apple cider vinegar, the lemon, a teaspoon of turmeric, a teaspoon of cayenne pepper, and you just get an immersion blender in there, and you just mix it all up, and then you pound it, and then that gives you that helps clean you out. And helps flush all the fungus out of your intestinal tract. And so that was an interesting couple of weeks there.
So you took that every day
I drank
Once
that
a
every
day.
day, once a day for.
And it was like 6 ounces or 8 ounces.
Yeah, and probably more like
ounces,
10 or 12.
ounces,
Yeah.
12 ounces.
Yeah, it was a cup and a half.
Crushing cans
cups.
of ACV.
Yeah, it was pretty aggressive, but I'm still doing, I just stopped the metals detox because you're supposed to cycle the clinoptilolite is what it's called.
There's a new word.
Yeah. I'm
Clinoptilolite.
Clinoptilolite. I'm using a product called Cyto Detox for that.
Okay.
And then I'm doing this fungal protocol, which is NAC, N-acetylcysteine, black seed oil, which is basically cumin seed oil, and oregano oil. And then I'm doing a parasite pill, which is caprasite by a company called, I can't remember the name, Mount Capra. They have a organic grass-fed goat farm up in state of Washington, and they have some really great products, and they have this parasite cleanse product, which I use. So I've been doing that, and I'm feeling great, but I think it all kind of hit me at the same time, and it just so happened to be the last day we were in Jackson Hole, so I missed the whole day. I was in the hotel room, like, sweating this thing out. My kids and my wife are off doing, like, dog sledding, which is kind of fun. Like, I didn't get to participate in that. They loved it.
That had to be a blast.
Yeah. And then they went snow tubing, and I'm sitting there in the hotel room, like, reading a book and, like, barely able to, like, eat anything because I just, like, didn't really have much of an appetite. But I felt fine on Tuesday. We flew home. Wednesday, we took a drive out to western part of Texas and checked out a piece of property we have out there, showed the kids around the area, and that was kind of the gist of our vacation. I got a little kind of slight fever again on that first day we were back, but overall, it was a great spring break, and we really enjoyed ourselves. So
nice.
Yeah.
Sounds like a full one.
Yeah, man.
My wife's sister and brother-in-law, my in-laws, came into town. We hung out with them and just kind of showed them around the area, North Texas.
Did you use stockyards and
I hit stockyards. Love the stockyards, especially for kids. My 3-year-old jumps up on top of this like 2,000-pound longhorn cow.
Take pictures, right?
It's just like it's insane. It's insane seeing the pictures. Yeah, definitely a memory. And she's actually wearing my pearl snap shirt that I wore when I was like 2 years old.
Oh, wow.
So she wore my pearl snap shirt from when I was a kid and did that. But I don't know. It was fun. Grandma and Grandpa came with us, and we had a good old time down at the stockyards.
Sweet.
Hit Grandscape and I went over to Allen and hit the park a few times. But other than that, we just kind of worked the first part of the week trying to get everything done. The joys of owning your own business, right? So we worked half the spring break, and then we're able to do a little rest and relaxation with her
Good
sister.
for you.
It was fun.
Good for you guys. That's great. Yeah. I feel like a lot happened over the last, week and a half during spring break, and while we were off not recording because of spring break.
And we weren't on YouTube. I feel like a hockey player, Like every few minutes, weeks, we get put back in the penalty box.
I know. And
now we're back out there skating around with our sticks.
Yeah, as a good friend of mine said, I had sent him the video, the YouTube video of our interview with Chase Faldmo right after we had posted. And I said, hey, this is a really good one that you would enjoy. And it took him a little while to get to it, and when he finally got around to looking at it, we had been ripped off. We'd been suspended. They had ripped it down. But it's on Rumble, so people can go check it out on Rumble. If you haven't listened to it already, you can get it on all the different platforms. It's an absolutely amazing, hour and a half of great content with Chase. It was a really, really fun interview that we did with him.
Rumble's where all our exclusive content is. Right? That's our exclusive content.
And this gentleman responded to me, and he said, hey man, I finally got around to, watching it, and YouTube pulled it down, but that means you were speaking truth, like you were saying some things that they don't like. So, That's a good sign, but he's like, I was able to find it on Rumble, and so he's going to check it out on Rumble. But yeah, I mean, we were off for a week, and there's so much going on, man. Like, it's like the news has been fast and furious. Just even in the past like few days with this banking thing, it's like, whoa,
it's 2008 all over again, right? It's
worse.
1930 all
like
over
it
again.
Could be worse, yeah. Well, Trump said it's like 1929. Like, we haven't seen anything like this in almost 100 years.
Yeah, 29, 30.
But yeah, it's SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, basically gets shut down by the Fed due to an illiquidity problem. They didn't have enough cash to supply a $42 billion bank run that clients were trying to.
Well, I thought that's where they got stopped out. Basically, is like they were able to give $42 billion in 24 hours, which is pretty remarkable, really. They were able to dispense that many,
that much money.
I don't know if you need a helicopter to make it rain, $42 billion in 24 hours, but
yeah,
that's a lot of dough that they just chunked out of those ATMs. I wonder how many fees that they were able to charge off that $42 billion.
I have no idea.
It was a lot. But yeah, they were trading at $400 a share just in September of 22, and now they're kerplunk, zero, nada, right?
Yeah, I saw something about we have a thread going around, and then someone posted in there like Oprah Winfrey lost $500 million in the SVB crash.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think Oprah had like $490 million tied up in SVB. Harry and Meghan had a lot of money tied up in there, and now they were all panicking.
Are they common shareholders? Is that what they are?
Either that or they do banking with them. I mean, I don't know. Like a lot of individuals will bank with them as well. I mean, 95%, I think, of their clients were carrying over $1 million with them.
97% of their clients were carrying over $250,000.
Yeah,
wasn't insured by FDIC protection, but they're all going to get their money back. The Federal Reserve and the Department of Treasury, the Department of Justice, all came together to make sure Oprah Winfrey apparently got her money back. You know, I guess maybe she called somebody and was like, "Nope, this can't be happening. I can't be giving away everybody new cars. You get a new car, you get a new car all day.
Yeah.
If I can't have my $500 million back or whatever, I don't know."
How does something like this happen though? I mean, it's because of fractional reserve lending, right? They basically loan out 90% of whatever the creditors have deposited into the bank.
Right, and it's honestly, I think it's just ridiculous that the depositors are taking the risk or ever have taken any risk on these banking failures, because all they're doing is putting their hard-earned money into an account. Heck, even the billionaires, right? Like, they're just putting their money in the account. These are depositors. Now, if these same billionaires are investing in the bank, actually common shares, preferred shares, any kind of equity position, they should definitely incur the same risk that the bank has extended itself.
Mm-hmm.
But these depositors, I mean, they largely have no choice but to choose a bank,
Yeah.
So they choose a bank. They decide to support a local bank. And honestly, this is a bank that's been around with Silicon Valley Bank. It's been around since 1983, and they deal with half of all of tech startups and life science startup companies, half of them all. I mean, that's a huge universe, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, it's just ridiculous that their money isn't protected, but
it's protected. It's just only protected it's only insured up to $250,000.
Right. And in 1930, when the FDIC was started, it was $2,500, right?
I think it was only $100,000 not even that long ago. I think they jumped it up to $250,000 pretty recently. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, they absolutely did. But I mean, they can go out, the bankers can go out and take those deposits and invest them with not a whole lot of, bumper rails to keep them, conservative with their investment thesis. And that's exactly what happened with Silicon Valley Bank, is they ended up investing it in a whole bunch of mortgage-backed securities in order to get a few more percentage points, and they had to hold it a little bit longer. So their money got tied up. So if there was a run on the bank, they wouldn't have had it, all for this, a couple extra percentage points so that they could beat their competitors, So they overextended themselves. And as a result, they went under. They say bulls get rich, bears get rich, pigs get slaughtered. And Silicon Valley Bank was a total pig. Yeah. And that's why they went under. And I don't know. They're depositors, in my opinion. All the depositors should be covered all the time. But, this is their last kind of strategic play that the central banks, and especially the United States and the Federal Reserve central bankers, can play, because you only get to play this card once, right? Because you can't say, okay, we're going to back them to 250,000. You can only do that once. So part of me thinks like, well, maybe they should have gone to, $1 million, or maybe they should have gone to $1.5 million, because they could have kept on like playing this trump card, this like line in the sand that makes everything okay, right? Yeah. Whereas this is the ultimate line. You can't go any further than this line. We're going to back them all up.
Yeah. I wonder, like, so where's the money come from, right? It comes from the federal government. The FDIC doesn't have that kind of money. I mean, they have to print it. If they're like, how are they
Federal Depository Insurance Corporation is what FDIC stands for.
Right.
And essentially banks pay insurance rates in order to have the ability to dip into that should that become a problem. And honestly, like with the number of $250,000, essentially, when you look at like insurance companies and reinsurance companies, these reinsurance companies are all over the insurance companies. Like, no, you have to be these actuarial tables, these actuaries. They're like, no, you can't do this and you can't do that, because they have a vested interest, right?
Right.
So the Federal Depository Insurance Corporation, they will have a vested interest, and they need to have a vested interest, more of a vested interest, because it's going to come down to their bottom line, right? So they are going to need to say they should have the ability to drop them from FDIC insurance protection should they not meet certain guidelines, which means you can't go off and invest in mortgage-backed securities with your deposits, right? Mm-hmm. You shouldn't be able to do all this risky investing if you're a bank, especially to the tune of 90% of your deposits, right? Like those should all be in treasuries, something very safe, something very forecastable, something that never deviates from, that return, linear return, path, right? Yeah. It just needs to be very predictable, right? So that's what's going to happen is insurance rates are going to go up because they now have to insure all the deposits, essentially, an average of all the deposits, essentially. But it's probably going to be ran a whole lot like SIPC, which is Security Investment Protection Corporation. And they, like when I worked for Fidelity Investments, they had every account at Fidelity insured for like $500 million a piece. Wow. Right? And this is SIPC protection. So they're able to pull it off with the securities accounts, right? And the brokerage accounts pretty easily. And to be honest, like cash deposits seems like a whole lot easier in vanilla, clearly, right, than any of the SIPC world. So FDIC should be able to accomplish this. They'll be able to jack up their rate a little bit. They should be able to do a little bit of governing and take it out of the banking regulators' hands, because Dodd and Frank and all the rest of these fools, that none of them got it. They've tried it. They didn't do it. They've tried again. They've given more and more chances, and they just can't get it right. So private, let some other company deal with it, and maybe this FDIC thing will work. We'll see. And if not, there's plenty of other people with a whole lot of great ideas as far as how our banking system should be ran.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it all just seems like one big house of cards, and they're all connected and all invested in one another. And I'm seeing, like PNC Bank's sixth largest bank in the United States is not putting in a bid for SVB, and they've declined to put a bid in. A lot of these bigger banks.
They did just buy BBVA.
Yeah, no, I know.
BBVA
but I mean,
covers.
a lot of these companies will acquire smaller banks all the time, right? So, or merge with big banks, to get even bigger. But there are obviously there's liquidity problems across the board. Like the debt to asset ratio in a lot of these banks isn't great because they're really all heavily leveraged. With the fractional reserve lending rules allow them to invest 90% of the money that you and I and companies deposit with them. So they only hold 10% of that money in cash, basically, in theory, right? It's really just like a number on a screen.
Depending on how much they can lend out, right, and invest, right? So, yeah.
Well, that's how they make money, right? They go out and they lend it out, right? Either a mortgage or personal loan or capital for a business.
Yeah, they get it from the Fed funds rate, and then they can make a spread off that Fed funds rate to whatever they can lend it out at, in addition to the deposits, right?
It's this whole thing is very intriguing because of the impact that it has, not just in the banking industry, but all of these companies that have money, either invested with or are using these banks to hold cash for them, or provide them with a revolving line of credit, or whatever it is.
Yeah, they're looking for, when you have money that's as cheap as it has been, right? Like the 30-year mortgage got down to like 2 or something, right?
Yeah, it's crazy low.
So way low, and everything else is moving in commensurate with that rate, right? Like they're way low too, including all these the bonds and all the different lending products are really kind of tied to the Fed funds rate, LIBOR, whatever you want to call it. They all kind of move in concert with each other. And if companies don't have easy access, like relatively easy access from yesterday, right? Like, or 10 days ago, or 100 days ago, or 200, 500, whatever days ago, right? Like there's a scale. If people's access to liquidity is being scaled back, which it is because interest rates are moving higher, right? And they're projected to go higher and higher and higher, then yeah, they're going to get a squeeze, and they're not able to spend as much money. And it's just kind of like, it's like the Surreal Life on VH1 where MC Hammer can afford his, his marble floors and all this stuff. You guys have seen it. Have you seen that show?
Yeah.
The Surreal Life,
yeah,
where they go around and they look at all these millionaires who got
Curtis Martin had a gold urinal.
Yeah, like that.
In his apartment in New York when he was playing with the Jets.
Did you see the Joe Rogan interview where I guess it's just Joe Rogan talking about the time he went and visited Kid Rock's place?
Oh, really?
Yeah, and it looks exactly like the White House, but it's tons bigger.
Yeah. Probably like an old plantation.
And
he just like refinished.
I think he just
like the White House.
I think he just did it. I think he built it from scratch.
Oh, really?
It's in Nashville. And right when you walk in, there's a big gold escalator, and he's got a gold shower. He's got a golden shower where the floor and the walls everything's gold.
Like actual gold?
Actual gold.
That's fucking wild.
Yeah, and there's only 2 bedrooms in this, 35,000 square foot. I could be totally way off on the number, but it's like some ridiculously huge number with only 2 bedrooms in the whole deal. But yeah,
that's to have that kind of money, and you spent you think of a lot of better things to do with that kind of money than having a golden shower in your house with all that square footage and 2 bedrooms. But
you're a rock and roll superstar, you have a mantra to maintain, right? Like an image, right? Like you gotta. Like the rappers of the 80s and 90s had to have the fur coats and the big chain necklaces, right? Yep. But the point of it is that when you take that money away from these people, whoever it is, and if it's banks or it's Ivy League, Silicon Valley startup funds, whatever it is, it doesn't matter who it is. There's a good portion of the population that is just terrible with their money. And I don't know if that has to do with the fact that we're all trained to be factory workers, thanks to the Education Act, thanks to, what is it? Huxley, Dewey? What's his name? Anyway.
Oh, John Dewey?
Yeah, John Dewey, or whoever it is.
I thought you were talking about Aldous Huxley, who wrote Brave New World, but...
No, I'm sorry. I sent you down the wrong rabbit hole.
That's okay.
Climb back out of that one,
That's all right. No worries.
But
John Dewey.
They just don't know how to work their budget back, right? Like, so they went from making, $100,000. They had a budget of $100,000 a minute. Now they only have $10,000 a minute that they can burn through. Mm. So, that produces challenges. You can't put a golden shower in every bathroom.
No.
So
it becomes impractical at that point, right?
Right. So, they start tanking, But,
well, I mean, now, then Signature Bank goes, and Signature Bank in New York goes, and then today Moody's downgrades the entire banking system basically, and because it's a operational risk across the board, and so you saw serious double-digit declines in stock performance across multiple banks. They had to halt trading on several of them.
Yeah, circuit breakers were being breached.
Yeah.
And then they started them back up, and then they breached them again.
Yeah, it got bad. And what's kind of scary is that, it's not just like SVB and Signature Bank, but it's what are the other ones that are going to come next, and what's the domino effect going to be? You're hearing the next ones could be First Republic Bank, Pinnacle. Like there's other names being floated around. Comerica, Zions. They've all kind of like taken serious hits, and they've all been downgraded. So it's like, who's the next domino to fall? And like, I'm wondering who the big bank is that's going to fall. Like Credit Suisse has been in trouble for a really long time, and if that one goes and starts to really tumble and or fail. The Swiss government doesn't have the same regulatory environment, probably a harsher regulatory environment than the United States does, but they don't have the same type of federal insured programs. They may. I'm not overly familiar with how the Swiss government operates, but I'm assuming they have a central bank and a Federal Reserve-esque type of system there, but
maybe Hang Seng.
It could
go down.
Yeah, man. Like one of those goes, and it's the ripple effect of that. It could be bad.
Or HSBC.
Yeah, you're seeing. Well, HSBC bought. I think I saw that they bought the SVB UK arm.
Okay.
For pretty cheap. I think I saw that somewhere. I could be wrong, but. I was watching a video earlier of Kim Iverson on YouTube, and she was interviewing Ed Dowd. And if everyone knows who Ed Dowd is, I would hope at this point he's a former BlackRock hedge fund manager, and he's been all over the software upgrade issues with
Dodd-Frank.
Yeah, and all of those things. Yeah. And so he is basically saying, he's like, what you got to look at is that he thinks this is end game for the US dollar. He thinks that with all these countries rather, like Russia, China, Saudi Arabia, all meeting together, all these BRICS, countries to,
and by the way,
de-link from the dollar.
Yeah.
He thinks that that's going to cause the end of the U.S. Federal Reserve currency as the world reserve currency. And if that happens, look out.
Yeah.
That's a scary thought.
Yeah, it is.
It definitely is. And I saw Saudi Arabia basically made amends with Iran late.
Well, Iran wants to be. Are they at BRICS? Aren't they at BRICS too, or are they like trying to get into BRICS? Or
yeah, they kind of are. I mean, they pretty much are.
Yeah, and so it's
Brazil, Russia, India, China, Iran, Saudi Arabia.
They all want to get off the U.S. dollar, and guess what's going to happen? Then what's going to happen is they're going to send all of their U.S. dollars back to the United States, which is going to cause a hyperinflationary event because we're printing money to give to Ukraine. We're going to have to print money to bail. We don't do bailouts anymore because of Dodd-Frank. We do these bail-ins, but we're going to have to print money to support this quasi-collapse, I guess you could call it, because who knows where it's going to go. The money's got to come from somewhere. Like the FDIC just doesn't have like billions of dollars sitting around to like cover all these people who are invested. Like they can't just say to Oprah, like, "Hey, here's your $500 million." Like they've got that money's got to come from somewhere. Yeah, so the Federal Reserve's gonna have to print it. So like Jerome Powell's gonna be sitting there with his money machine, like printing money and handing it out to all these people who had all this money stashed at SVB.
Yeah, like they did for forever after the 2008 financial crisis, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's...
and that's going to cause an inflationary event. And then when all this money comes back from all these other countries that are trying to delink from the U.S. dollar, because they've got tons of U.S. dollars floating around in China and in Saudi Arabia and in Russia, and all that comes back to the United States, and you have a hyperinflationary event, and...
Yeah, I mean, it's been happening.
Boom.
I mean, they've already been deleveraging from the U.S. dollar pretty aggressively. Russia most aggressively, right? Mm-hmm. But you bring up another thing about Saudi Arabia. I was reading Aramco, which is the 95% state-owned oil giant, Saudi Arabian oil giant. For 2022, their net income was $161 billion. It's only second to Apple on the list of world's most valuable companies with a market cap of $1.9 trillion. But that's just insane how huge Saudi Arabia is. And they're just out there, they started the Live golf tour. They purchased Newcastle United. They're getting involved with Formula One. But they're going to get involved in a whole lot of other businesses. This is just one infographic I saw. With the $161 billion, they could purchase the market cap of Ralph Lauren, Pinterest, Snapchat, Zoom, Crocs, Kellogg's, eBay, Etsy, Coinbase, Campbell's, and that's it. All of them. And still have money left over. And it's insane.
Yeah.
It's a huge company. And it's a ton of cash. I don't know if anybody's ever...
It's going to be an interesting little roller coaster ride here over the next few months for sure. Get prepared, just like have some cash stashed aside for a rainy day.
Some freeze dries food.
In case, yeah. I mean, like it could get bad. I mean, with the train wrecks, and then the runs on banks. Like people are talking about going to banks and pulling out cash and canceling accounts, and
the train wrecks. You brought that up. What about that? Was it you that sent me that video today about the train wreck and how it coincided with
the serpent
the serpent mound in Ohio?
And it happened on the same day as the Grammy. It was a whole 666 thing there. It was like February 6th.
Yeah.
So 2 6s and then the serpent.
Are you hooked up to the Blue Tool? Play that clip?
No, I'm not. No, I don't. I know I don't have it hooked up. But yeah, okay. It's a TikTok video I found where this woman had made a crazy connection between Sam Smith's clearly satanic, February 6th Grammy show,
right?
Performance, and the crash in East Palestine. I think was that same day, the 6th.
Well, it was the day that they shot the thermite.
Yeah, the day that they did the actual, like, they burned it all and exploded it. And then, she made this crazy connection, which kind of like makes sense. There's this serpent mound. It's like it's a location in Ohio, and it dates back to like
13,000 during
BC.
the Younger Dryas event.
Yeah, and
or before the Younger Dryas event.
Yeah, it's on that show. What's the show that
Ancient
Graham Hancock's
Apocalypse.
Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix?
Graham Hancock and Randall Carlson.
Yeah, and he kind of like goes against some of the archaeologists that like say that this was like this. He's saying it dates way further back than what most archaeologists are saying it does.
They're saying the American Indians did it, but really it was kind of like
a satanic
people
cult from way back, like thousands BC. And they're saying, she made this connection that it's could be this event where they burned off all the plastic on the 6th, and the Sam Smith performance on the 6th, and then you have the final 6 is this snake mound in Ohio, and it's like, they trying to like summon Satan.
It's kind of like, that one thing, you hear about this one thing, right? Like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, okay, yeah, sure. But like when you start adding up all the different things,
mm-hmm.
it starts to be a little more credible. Like, these
like,
things continuously repeat themselves,
like
It's,
Rihanna's whatever performance at the Super Bowl when she was showing Illuminati signs and she was dancing, pregnant, dressed in red, also a fairly satanic type performance. And they're saying that what they're doing is they're basically, and not indoctrinating is not the right word, but they're doing some sort of ritual to all the viewers that are watching it or that are there at the Super Bowl. It's odd.
Devilish
that they
witnessing
do these things. Speaking of Satan, though, so
speaking of Satan,
Joe Biden has not signed the unanimously passed software upgrade Origins bill. I
was shocked to see. I think there's like 245 yays or something ridiculous.
It was 419 to 0.
419.
So it was a 419 to 0, unanimous.
Yeah.
This happened 4 days ago, and he has still not signed the bill to have the origins of Convid, aka the software upgrade, passed and
really
so
walking
or
that line.
issued. And I want to stay on YouTube, and
we love you too.
And Karen Jean-Pierre today claimed that they were dedicated to transparency surrounding it, but refused to answer if he would sign the bill. So now I'm wondering, is he going to veto it or what? I mean, what's the holdup there, Joe? Like, why are we sitting on this? Everybody in the world wants to know what we know about the origins of this. It's been 3 years. Hundreds of thousands, millions of people all over the world have died from it. Supposedly died from that, but we don't know if it was just from that or if it was from other things, but whatever. Why not just let the American people decide for themselves, like what happened? Why not just share the information with the public? There can't be anything in there that people aren't ready to hear or see, unless something nefarious was going on, and he's trying to cover it up.
He's checking with Pfizer,
Ukraine.
Make sure his Ukrainian overlords.
He's checking with Zelensky to make sure that they burned all the documents before
Obama. You mean his third term? Is this Obama's third term?
I think it might.
Is that going to get me kicked off YouTube?
I don't think.
Dang it!
I mean, it could be his third term. It sounds like it's his third term. It feels like it's his third term. But yeah, so he won't sign that, but he will sign an executive order to push through universal background checks on guns and tweeted today that he wanted to call for ban on assault weapons, which again are already not legal. Like in the traditional sense, like an assault weapon is not a legal gun to own in the United States.
Is he referring to the Armor Light 15?
Yes, he is, because he's an idiot and he doesn't know the difference, or he does know the difference. He just doesn't care, and he wants
scary looking guns.
The uneducated American, the uneducated Second Amendment,
No mean
uneducated,
tweets.
not just generally uneducated, but the ones who aren't educated in the way of guns. He doesn't think that they're going to be able to catch on to the fact that an AR-15 doesn't actually stand for assault rifle. It stands for Armalite rifle.
Yeah, just like DTF stands for
Dudes Talking Freedom.
Exactly.
That's right.
By the way, Dudes Talking Freedom. Have you seen these sweet new tees?
Shirts, new merch. It's going to go up on the store.
Pop.
Are you listening?
Yeah, we the dudes. Some new stuff. We got a whole lot of different new designs, really.
Yeah, we did. We did some cool work.
And we were able to do some one-off shipments, like anything you want. We're able to drop ship it straight to your house, and I don't know.
Yeah, we're gonna pump some new designs out. We're gonna drop them up on the website. We're gonna see what people like, and we're gonna try to come up with some really cool American merchandise. Americana.
Yeah. So the other stupid thing, I don't know if it's stupid. It actually is probably a pretty smart decision, but it goes against everything that he ran on his presidency for, to the extent he ran out of his basement, right? Like, he is going to be Biden. Biden has approved an $8 billion oil drilling Willow project in Alaska, 180,000 barrels per day. So, no new drilling will be done on my watch. I mean, that was one of the most played sound bites.
No new drilling.
No new taxes. It's totally the same. If they are that emphatic about an issue, they're lying to you.
A lawsuit's already been filed in a bid to halt that drilling project.
Really?
Yeah.
I think it's funny. Good.
Yeah.
They should fight him.
They should. I mean, the guy flip-flops more than Fauci does.
Yeah.
Speaking of Fauci,
jeez.
That guy is getting hammered.
Is he?
Well, I mean, like they're all over him for his continual flip-flopping.
Yeah.
And the amount of money that went into this lab leak, where he said it wasn't a lab leak, couldn't have been a lab leak, and now all signs point to it being a lab leak, which, by the way, all of us conspiracy, quote, theorists
crazy
were saying 3 years ago that this thing leaked out of a lab. I would venture to take that one step further and say that it actually came from China, Ukraine. Not China.
China. I got to hear it.
But yeah, U.S. biolabs in Ukraine, and one of those cities is named China with a Y. So who knows? Could have come from there. And then dropped off by our favorite three-letter agency in the Wuhan province of
China.
To make it look like our friends in red out there in China actually did the dirty work. Now, those are just theories by a conspiracy guy. So time will tell, or maybe it won't, because we're still waiting on the JFK files. But,
Yeah, we are, And did you see that video where they slow it down, and it was some new video that hadn't been released until recently, where the driver turns around and shoots a bullet after JFK's been hit once.
Yeah.
To make sure that he is truly dead into him.
Yeah.
And it had shellfish toxins in the bullet.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So there's an amazing documentary that you can find actually on YouTube, and it's called "Everything is a Rich Man's Trick," and it talks about JFK, 9/11, and a couple of other things, and it ties in some of the historical kind of like big banking families, like the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds and the DuPonts and the Bushes and all that. And it is an amazing documentary. I think it's like 2.5 or 3 hours, but it's called Everything is a Rich Man's Trick. You can find it on YouTube. If you can't find it on YouTube, I'm sure you can find it on Rumble, because Rumble doesn't censor anything. But it will blow your freaking mind. And it shows all of that stuff that you just mentioned.
Yeah.
It shows the driver. It shows like Woody Harrelson's father was involved.
Oh yeah.
It shows, it talks about the Bay of Pigs and how, some of our favorite 3-letter agencies were all kind of tied into this whole thing. And there was this big war going on, basically, this clandestine war going on between, the mafia and the Kennedy family. And, obviously, if anyone's ever heard Kennedy's speech on secret societies, like, why he was killed. And
that he opposed the Federal Reserve.
Well, yeah, right. I mean, all of those things. And so, it's kind of part of the secret society kind of theme, right?
Oh, sure.
So it is an amazing watch. I highly recommend it to anyone who wants to get more information on the JFK assassination and learn a little bit more. It's really well put together by this guy. I'd say it's about 20 years old, maybe 15 years old, maybe something like that. It's narrated by this I think he's a British dude. But it's really well researched, and the information is presented in a pretty awesome fashion. A lot of video.
And what's the name of that again?
Everything is a Rich Man's Trick.
All right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Check that one out. Did you see this Tucker Carlson short that was released this week?
The Full Send stuff on Full Send podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was pretty crazy.
It was. He talked about a few different things, but the UFO one was the biggest mind-blowing one for me.
Yeah. So like 100 U.S. servicemen have died from UFOs, right? And they're brain injuries or they are some other type of injuries, but they can't really tie it to, a localized insurance code or whatever. There's no explanation for these deaths because
like their families are suing the U.S. government, but they're not getting a lot of traction because there's really nothing. They don't have much of a leg to stand on.
Right. They're not being compensated because they were killed in a way that isn't really recognized by society at this point.
Yeah. But what was interesting was he was talking about how they have undeniable proof and evidence that these UFOs come up and down into and out of the water at extremely high speeds, and they're going at like 100 knots underwater, which is virtually impossible for anything that's like that currently known by man. I've been told that, or I heard this UFO expert that was on this podcast explain these UFOs and the way they travel is that the way most vehicles or planes and things travel is they have something thrusting them, right? Like thrusting them forward or mechanically moving them forward, right? Where the UFOs actually move so quick, it's almost like they're being pulled around, right? Mm-hmm. And that's how effortlessly they move around. Like there's just zero friction and they just move like that. It's almost, I want to say vindication isn't really the right word, because I think a lot of people believe that there are UFOs, and I think a lot of people believe that there has been some level of contact with like life from another realm, dimension, planet, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Something.
I think a larger percentage. I think I would say majority, certainly more than 50% of the U.S. population. I would say more than 50% of probably the world population believe that there is some other form of life, that intelligent life, I should say, that is out there somewhere.
I mean, just look at the pyramids, right?
Yeah, I mean, like that's like a great example. It's and a lot of these like these buildings these structures that have been around, and it's like, were these structures really built in the,
Megalithic
1800s,
structures.
or were they built in like the like who knows when they were built, and were they just like claimed to have been built in a certain period of time?
Yeah.
History, as they say, is written by the winners. So who knows? You look at some of these old World Fair photos and videos, and there's these massive electrical light shows and stuff, and we're talking like 1800s, like before we had that level of like electricity going on.
What was it? The big balls of mercury filled balls that they had sticking out of the tops of all their buildings. They're all over the place. These spheres full of mercury.
Yep.
And the mercury balls actually pulled energy from the atmosphere, like the sky.
Yeah.
And these balls of mercury, they were up protruding from the tips of buildings, would have a wire, like a copper wire, that came down to lights in their houses or in their abodes or whatever, and they would power their homes. They'd power different things with this electricity that's just hanging out in the air, right?
Yeah.
And I also saw along the same line is that if you take a wire, and this is a cool project or just experiment that you could do at home, or you could try and see if it actually works. I don't know if it works. I haven't done it. But you just take a rod and you wrap a copper wire around it, and you have a kind of a straight end at the bottom, and the rest is just coiled. And you just do it like, I don't know, 2 feet up in the air, whatever. And you just jab it down into the soil next to your plant, whether it's a watermelon or a squash or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's supposed to get energy from the atmosphere and bring it down into the soil, and it electrifies the soil and helps it grow to these huge, like giant specimens,
Really?
Yeah, because we're all electric beings.
Mm-hmm.
We all, in every single cell of our body, we have electricity in it, right? Like, it's been proven, like, it's a very small amount, but you add it all up and we have trillions of cells, it's a pretty decent amount of electricity going through our bodies. So, and that goes for pretty much every living thing, right? So,
yeah. Well, Nikola Tesla knew that and ultimately paid the ultimate price for like trying to promote the ability to provide free energy throughout the world.
right.
There's no money in free. There's no, you can't make money off of free.
Right. There's no such thing as free.
But yeah.
But there is, and you can, and they should just accept it and move on, because if you can just get that out of the way, there could be so many new industries. There really could. And people are so afraid of the past or of the future. And they cling to the past. Just look at our U.S. Patent Office, right? Like, I don't know, it was like 10, 15 years ago, I was looking at the amount of patents that were being filed each year, and there's just like this huge multiple over the past decade, like the 90s or the 2000s are greater than the 90s, and the 2010s are greater than the 2000s. And you're just like, no way is it ever going to get more and more and more. How many more things can we discover? But they do by multiples, like they continuously patent more and more stuff, but you never see any of these patents come into fruition. These mega corporations have all these guys working on all these great ideas and these awesome patents, and they patent things and they just put it in their back pocket.
Yeah.
And they just use it to suppress, any advancements that could infringe on their current monopoly, essentially. And progress doesn't really happen. In a lot of ways, the U.S. Patent Office and patents, period, are just, they're not really great for the advancement of society.
Yeah.
In theory, it sounds like a good idea. You'd compensate the people that are inventing this stuff, because nobody likes getting ripped off like China does, right? Like, that's all they do, right? Like, they just rip people off. Not all they do, but a large portion of China's industry is just ripping off designs from other people who have great ideas, and then they just, reverse engineer it, and try and improve on the efficiency, you know, a little bit, right? And then
Kind of like the software upgrade.
yeah, kind of like software upgrades.
Where we were told not to do gain of function research here in the United States, and then they decided to ship it out to Wuhan. CBS News has obtained records that reportedly show the U.S. government may have paid twice for projects in Wuhan, China, through the NIH and USAID. And some of those research projects may be tied to labs implicated in the lab leak origin theory of the software upgrade. So it's interesting. And, you know, I think a lot of this other stuff that we're seeing with Biden and the executive order on, you know,
the gun grab.
It's like the background checks.
Universal background checks.
Yeah, I think it's all like, that's all distraction. It's all just like trying to, like, you know, shiny new object over here. Look over here. Don't look at the lab leak theory. Look over here. Don't look at this banking collapse. Look over here.
Look, the Goodyear blimp. Oh, look, a weather balloon.
Don't look at the fact that I'm not signing a unanimous bill that came to my desk to tell everybody where, you know, the leak actually came from. Just look over here at this like universal back check gun grab. And you know what? The media will feed into that. They'll absolutely fan that flame. But it's going to be, I think it's going to be an interesting little ride here for the next few weeks. We're going to see a lot of fast and furious news. Things are definitely picking up speed.
Yeah, the vol trade is on, right? Like volatility is up above the VIX, which is the volatility is one metric of how you price options and futures based on the underlying contract, whether or not how much it moves up and down, essentially. The other big piece to that is time value, right? Like, so if I buy a June contract, you know, if I buy an option if I buy an option to buy a stock, a call option to buy a stock at a certain price in June, that time period between now and June, which currently, right, like it's 3 months, whatever. That's kind of the biggest portion of an option premium that you're paying to buy this option or futures premium. But then the next one is generally the volatility piece, right? And the volatility is above 20, and that's kind of the line with the VIX. The VIX is basically the volatility of the S&P 500 options contracts. So that's how you look at the VIX, is just the volatility, how much volatility is in those premiums and how much you're paying for it. And the average generally, or kind of the line in the sand really, is kind of 20. And when it goes above 20, things are getting really volatile. And then when it goes back below 20, things are pretty predictable, right? Like, so right now things are unpredictable, and the VIX is above 20.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty good, you know, way of telling that, you know, the market's telling you that, right? The pricing metrics are telling you that things are less predictable.
Right. Yeah, we should probably say that we're not financial advisors, and none of this is to be construed as financial advice.
Well, I don't think I tell anybody to buy or sell.
No,
anything,
but you never know. Like, you know, just cover ourselves.
Hey, historical
there.
performance
or medical
is not
advice,
indicative of future returns.
Or medical advice, as it were. You know, talking about my detox protocol, you never know.
Hey, this is just a comedy show, right?
It is, man. We're just here joking around. A couple of dudes talking freedom.
Yeah.
Are you listening? Damn.
All right, dudes and dudettes, that's a wrap for this episode of Dudes Talking Freedom. For DTF, this is Jeremy.
This is Luke.
And we'll see you next time.